It is International Teacher Appreciation Week right now, and this year there are fewer teachers to appreciate. The National Center for Education Statistics reports nearly half of public schools were operating without a full teaching staff in October 2022. 27% of those schools had multiple teaching vacancies. The data also show public schools with large minority populations and those in high poverty areas have had the most difficulty filling critical positions. We are joined by Richard Ingersoll, who is with the University of Pennsylvania. Richard, thank you for joining us. So tell us what the challenges are for teachers and why the numbers are so low.
The whole COVID crisis provided a great deal of stress on teachers and students, and I don't think the situation has really recovered. From the beginning, it was very unclear. It still is unclear. Should schools be remote? Should they be in person? Should there be some combination? And whatever the strategy, there seemed to be a lot of difficulties and a lot of stress. That's probably reflected in the decline of student scores. And this uncertainty is reflected in the larger society, this tremendous amount of controversy over how to best deal with the COVID situation. And one upshot has been a huge uptick in criticism of teachers in schools. And so it's not surprising that there's been an uptick as far as we can see. We don't have the confirming data yet, but all indications are an increase in teacher quitting, teacher turnover, and hence teacher shortages.
So are there a set of problems that could be handled that are a part of the COVID hangover? But then there are some underlying issues. I mean, teacher pay has been slow. Certainly in the teachers I talk to, there's issues of classroom size. Can you separate out for us from what you just described that's COVID related, what challenges there are for teachers that have been ongoing and maybe perhaps exacerbated by COVID, but that are ongoing and not necessarily sprouted from that?
Yes, that's a very good point. For instance, teacher shortages, there's nothing new about that. In fact, we've had teacher shortages for the better part of the last century. The solution, in my view, is deceptively simple. No surprise, well-paid, well-respected jobs and occupations and professions with good working conditions, they don't suffer from employee problems of employee recruitment or retention. So the simple solution is you improve this job, you upgrade it in various ways, and that would help you deal with the COVID problems in particular, but the larger problem which plague this line of work.
And is anybody doing a good job, Richard, at trying to solve some of these problems, either paying more with bonuses or salaries or in some way getting at these issues that you've identified?
Yes, there's a huge amount of innovation and reform out there. And it's important to note that salaries, generally teaching is not a very well-paid line of work, but salaries are not the only or the main problem. There's all these problems of the workplace, the working conditions, and management issues. And some of those could be far less expensive to fix. And there's all kinds of experimentation. I mean, my own case is sort of an illustration. I was a high school teacher for a number of years. And then I became a college professor. And really, the transition was like night to day. I could hardly even compare these two lines of work. And I often wonder, can't we simply improve the lot of elementary and secondary teachers? In other words, make the job as a job, make it better. And there's lots of examples out there. There's lots of experimentation. And of course, we can always look to professions like being a professor as examples.
And finally, Richard, we've had these test scores most recently with civics and history, but reading and math was also down. How much do you think the challenges the teachers are facing contributed to that? And how much more difficult does that make life for teachers because they're getting now more pressure additionally now on the testing score front?
I think it's both. I think COVID's probably responsible. Of course, we need to, do careful research to establish that. But in turn, this has led to an increase in criticism and also stress on teachers. And, that's not a solution. It's, yes, teachers are responsible for a number of things, but it's really unfair to blame them for problems that they don't have any control over. That's not going to work. It's simply going to drive people out or demotivate them. So there are these larger problems, and I think it's reflected in the test scores.
All right, Richard Ingersoll from the University of Pennsylvania. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you.